What happens when two warriors hate each other so much that an entire crowd gathers just to watch them try to kill each other? No army, no battlefield, no soldiers charging from every direction. Just two men, two weapons, and one very bad day for somebody. Throughout history, some of the craziest rivalries ended with a 1v1 fight where everything depended on a single person. And these were not friendly boxing matches. These were the kind of fights where losing meant you might not be going home. Number 1, Miyamoto Musashi versus Sasaki Kojiro. Japan 1612. Two of the most famous swordsmen of their age were about to meet for a duel that would become legendary. On one side was Miyamoto Musashi. Musashi was already famous for defeating numerous opponents and had developed a reputation for being incredibly unpredictable. He was not the type of swordsman who cared much about looking impressive. He cared about winning. On the other side was Sasaki Kojiro. Kojiro was also a highly respected swordsman and was particularly famous for his technique called Tsubame, often translated as swallow reversal. It was supposedly a lightning-fast sword technique inspired by the movement of a swallow.
Wait, you're still watching? So subscribe!
So basically, one guy had a technique named after a bird. The other guy had a reputation for showing up late and making everyone angry. Perfect. The duel was arranged on Ganryujima, a small island. And this is where Musashi apparently decided to add a little psychological warfare. He arrived late. Very late. Kojiro was reportedly furious. Imagine preparing yourself for the most important fight of your life. Checking your sword, stretching your arms, staring dramatically at the horizon. And then your opponent is just not there. Eventually Musashi arrived by boat. And then came another strange detail. Kojiro had brought a proper sword. Musashi reportedly carried a wooden sword. Not exactly reassuring. It had apparently been carved from an ore during the journey. Kojiro was understandably confident. He had a real sword. Musashi had what looked like something stolen from a boat. The two men faced each other. The tension must have been incredible. Kojiro drew his sword. Musashi stood ready. Then the fight began. Kojiro attacked with his famous technique. Musashi avoided the attack and moved in. Then came the decisive strike. Musashi struck Kojiro in the head. Kojiro fell. The duel was over. Musashi had won. And the strange part is that many details of this famous duel come from later accounts, so historians cannot be certain that every dramatic detail happened exactly as the legends claim. But the story survived because it perfectly captures Musashi's reputation. He wasn't simply trying to beat his opponent with a sword. He was trying to beat him mentally before the sword fight even began. He arrived late. He used an unusual weapon. And he turned the entire situation into psychological warfare. Kojiro brought the famous technique. Musashi brought the famous audacity. And apparently, the ore worked. Number 2, Jean de Carrouges versus Jacques Gris. Now we move from Japan to medieval France. And this time the fight wasn't just about pride. It was about an accusation that could destroy someone's reputation forever. The year was 1386. Jean de Carrouges was a French knight. Jacques Gris was also a knight. The two men knew each other, but their relationship became extremely bitter. Carrouges' wife Marguerite accused Gris of assaulting her. Gris denied the accusation. There were legal proceedings, arguments, testimony, politics, and eventually the case reached an extraordinary conclusion. There was not enough evidence to settle the matter in the normal way. So the authorities allowed the two men to fight. This was known as judicial combat. The idea was terrifyingly simple. They would fight before witnesses, and God would supposedly grant victory to the innocent man. Basically, medieval France had invented a courtroom where the final evidence was a sword. Imagine walking into court and the judge says, "Unfortunately, we cannot determine what happened." Then he points toward the parking lot. "So you two can fight about it." The duel was held in Paris before a huge crowd. King Charles VI was present. This wasn't some secret fight in a dark alley. It was a major public event. Carrouges and Gris entered the combat. They initially fought on horseback. The battle was brutal. Eventually, the fight continued on foot. Both men were heavily armed and protected by armor. The duel dragged on. Neither man was willing to surrender. But eventually, Carrouges gained the advantage. He defeated Gris and killed him. Carrouges survived. The crowd witnessed the result. And because Carrouges had won, his accusation was treated as vindicated under the rules and beliefs surrounding judicial combat at the time. But there is an important distinction. Winning the duel does not prove what actually happened. Modern historians cannot use the result as factual proof of the accusation. The duel tells us something else. It shows how seriously medieval society could take honor, reputation, and public accusations. Carrouges didn't simply want revenge. He wanted his name restored. And he was willing to risk his life in front of the king to do it. The story became famous as one of the last major judicial duels in medieval France. 2 knights, 1 accusation, 1 battlefield, and a crowd watching history unfold. Number 3, Goliath and his challenger. Wait, no, we're not doing that one. Because this is supposed to be crazy 1v1s, and David already has enough screen time. Instead, let's look at another legendary warrior duel. Miyamoto Musashi wasn't the only Japanese swordsman whose reputation was built around dangerous personal combat. The samurai world produced countless stories of warriors settling rivalries through duels. But Musashi's encounter with Kojiro remains special because it wasn't just about strength. It was about preparation, psychology, timing, and understanding your opponent. That is the real reason these historical 1v1s are so fascinating. A battlefield can hide mistakes. An army can rescue you. 1,000 soldiers can cover your weakness. But in a duel, there is nowhere to hide. Every movement matters. Every mistake matters. One wrong step, one missed strike, one moment of hesitation, and the fight can be over. That is what makes the duel between Musashi and Kojiro so memorable. And the fight between Carrouges and Gris shows the darker side of the same idea. For them, losing wasn't simply losing a competition. Their honor, reputation, and future were on the line. One man walked into the arena believing that victory would prove his case. The other walked in believing he could survive and defeat his accuser. There was no referee stopping the fight after a clean hit. There was no ambulance waiting beside the ring. There was no replay. Just 2 armored men, fighting until one of them couldn't continue. And honestly, after hearing these stories, modern arguments feel pretty harmless. Someone insults you online. Ignore them. Someone disagrees with you. Move on. Someone steals your parking spot. Take a deep breath. Because historically, the alternative was apparently, fine, meet me on an island at sunrise. And that is the terrifying thing about history. Sometimes the biggest stories were not decided by massive armies. They were decided by 2 people standing a few meters apart, waiting for the signal. One man attacks, the other reacts, and within seconds, an argument that lasted months or even years can suddenly end forever. No second chances, no undo but, Just one final move. That is what makes the craziest 1v1 fights in history so unforgettable. Because when everything else is stripped away, there are only two warriors left, and only one of them gets to walk away. Past isn't dead. It's waiting to be told.